In a world where global communication is connecting us in many ways, we need to stay connected. Anytime, anywhere, any place. Welcome to the world of Athelos.
To have you back. Are you back in Amsterdam or are you still in Lesbos?
No, actually I'm back in Amsterdam since a couple of days.
Good.
Yeah.
So how was your trip out there?
Well, I must say it was very impressive and very touching to see all the work that we've done, of course, for the past 5 years. That went in flames, and see again the suffering of the people one more time in their perilous journey, finding themselves on the streets. So,
and I'm sure that must be heart-wrenching as well to see that. I mean, to hear about it and read about it and watch it on TV and on communications, but to see it firsthand, it must just affect you in a way that you probably can't even describe, I guess.
Well, it's definitely an emotional roller coaster. I mean, we've been living literally with these people for the past 5 years, trying to provide them a sense of dignity. And seeing that after 5 years, we end up in more or less the same situation for them, that's that strikes me a lot. Yeah.
Well, we pray that things get better for those that you've been working with and those that are affected, and also that they receive the dignity and the respect that they deserve. Because I know that's a challenge, you know, in the work that you do as well. And obviously in due course, we'll touch upon some of those points in our conversation today, but we'll have future conversations as well about the work that you've been doing and how we can all support each other in that. In that regard. So we're just waiting for a couple of more panelists. So thank you for all being patient, everyone that's listening and online as well. We're also live on YouTube as well, I think. And obviously this is being recorded, so we can share this widely later on as well. So just in terms of housekeeping, whilst we're just waiting for everyone else to join us, for those listening in online, if you have any questions, feel free to just ask them and jump in. We'll try and incorporate all of those questions the best we can. If we can't, don't worry, we will come back to them and we will get the questions asked in some way, shape or form. And it might be that we do a follow-up session or a podcast or something like that. For the panelists, this is basically, there's a phrase, "Mikasa, tukasa, apna ghar samjhe." Feel at home, no formalities, just relax. You're amongst friends. Say whatever you feel from the heart. If you don't get a chance to say everything that you want, that's fine as well. We can carry on the conversation another time. And just in terms of, we have allocated an hour, already 5 minutes in, and I'm conscious that we will probably run over. So don't worry about that either as well. And if when you're giving your comments or your feedback or thoughts or anything, just try and keep it, I don't want to say short because that's not the phrase I want to use. Try and keep it inspirational as best you can, with some kind of example that someone can resonate with and relate to. And I know, just knowing all of you individually, there are tons of those. So think of the ones that you feel would be most apt to the conversation we're having. If you remember something a little bit later on, fine, jump in the conversation. We're not going to do a typical panel session where we ask just a question and you respond. If you feel like you have something to say, jump in, interrupt. Martijn, do you want to say anything before we kick off?
I want to say a lot, but I want to listen even more. And I'm very thankful when I follow the chats already from, let's say, Global Connections, people from China, Palestine, Europe, plugging in. I'm grateful that we can have at least 1 hour conversation to listen to our hearts, but also to move on to action. And I think this is the togetherness that we want to celebrate in the UN week with the UN Global Assembly. We are thankful to having this time slot to expose our, let's say, desires. And when Adil is plugging in, because he just came back from Lesbos, it immediately resonates with me. What is he doing there? How is he doing? How are the people, you know, being treated after a couple of weeks? We had a big hazardness of situation. So I'm so curious to listen. So that is, I think, Zubair, to welcome everybody. It's a togetherness. It's 1 hour of inspiration. And of course, like we agreed, a role model is a big word. I think it's call to action. It's leading by purpose. So I look forward to have this conversation with all the panelists, but of course as well to the people all around the globe that want to make a movement in these very different times. So this is the first thing I wanted to share with you also, Zubair. Thank you for seeing you as well, because we tried to meet each other from the UK, London to Amsterdam to whatever. We are getting limited, but again, we speak always and we see each other and we are moving. So I think that's the message also during this conversation. We are moving together, and how can we work?
Power of communication. Okay, so I think we've got everyone on board. So I can see Imtinan on there. Assalamu alaikum, Imtinan. Hermina's back. Hugo, I can see the box. Hugo's on there. I think we're just waiting for Niaz, Malik. So hopefully he can join us. I know he had a meeting, so I think we'll kickstart, and if anyone's missing, they can just jump in. Is Jehan on there? I can't see her. Jehan, are you there?
I think she dropped off.
Okay, well, we'll just have to bear with any technical difficulties because we're on multiple time zones. So we've got New York, Amsterdam, London, Karachi, Islamabad, Adelaide, Amsterdam. I don't know where else. So we'll just work from there. Okay, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, everyone, and welcome to this inspirational conversation. Thank you for joining us during UN Week for this particular conversation. My name is Zubair Anwar-Bawany. It's great to have here with me is my co-host, Martijn van de Ven. Hi, Martijn.
Hello.
Before we jump into this lively interactive discussion with all of our amazing panelists and speakers here, I'd like to first ask the people listening in, whether that's through Zoom or through YouTube or any other means, to use the chat function to ask any questions. And as I said earlier, if there are any questions that we can't ask today because of time, then we will still put those questions to the panelists and ask them to answer that. So panelists, be prepared. It could be literally 101 questions about everything and how to solve the world's problems. So this session is part of UN Week and Uniting Business Live. This forum is focused on pragmatic discussions and examples of how quickly to drive the decade of action. That's the buzzword at the moment, especially forward in these precarious times. It's also a milestone as the UN reaches 75 years and also 20 years of the UN Global Compact. Many people have been part of this journey, so this is a thank you to everyone for their role that they have played during that time, and for others joining the journey now and in the future for the role you may play as we enter this decade of action. So the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, are undoubtedly shaping global norms of sustainable development. They also represent values and offer a vision that elevates the development principles that have guided our own growth and prosperity as businesses, as individuals, as organizations. There's an inherent doing good mindset that's apparent across nations, businesses, and organizations. We look at the tweak that's required to enable companies, local governments, philanthropists, and other institutions to incorporate the UN's global goals into their core business practices and strategies that will present a smarter blueprint for gaining a competitive and comparative advantage over the long term. So we started 2020 as a decade of change with a very different view of the actions we would need to take and how we jointly address the challenges of the world around us. The world around us is very different right now, 5 months or 6 months on, but the sentiment in tackling these challenges, from food poverty to climate action, is very much alive. We've seen from the growing number of campaigns, fundraisers people are hosting, to the support business community have been providing for their people and doing their part as best they can, we're seeing that there's a renewed vigor in doing good. a sense of collective responsibility, I guess. And we're seeing that that's now more than ever before. And that's a great springboard for the SDGs. So we want to find out through this conversation if we can move this inherent nature of doing good and will to do good into a movement of doing good people effectively, who act as role models, activists in activating the SDGs in their lives and business and motivating others. So today we have some really, truly amazing people, really amazing people. Thank you so much for being on board. I know when Martijn and I were talking about who can we have on board, we couldn't have found more inspirational and motivational people who have been demonstrating and leading by example. So thank you to all of you for joining us today. We have Imtinan Ahmad from askimtinan.com, Hugo van Meijenfeldt from UN Global Compact Netherlands. Apologies if I'm pronouncing names incorrectly. Adil Izemrane from Movement on the Ground, Hermina Johnny from Artemis Foundation, Ehsan from UNDP, Darcy Lunn from Teaspoons of Change, Jehan from the Nest.io, and Niaz Malik from China Mobile Pakistan. Thank you for all joining us. So just want to ask, is everyone comfortable? Yeah, in your respective time zones, some early,
yeah, sorry
some late.
about being a bit late.
That's fine, Niaz, fine, no problem at all. And you all have something hot or cold in your hand. Great, fantastic. Okay, so Martijn, I know you want to say a few words.
Yes, thank you, Zubair, for this warm introduction. Everybody, welcome from all around the globe. We know that it's been a very different year, of course, for everyone. That extends to everybody, you know, everyone, everywhere, any place. From the way we now work to the way we interact, this is an example how we seems to be connected to listen and to think together and what can we do. And what a different way of doing things that is highlighted is that we're able to become closer, build new relationships and widen the conversations we are having. And we already had it last week when I got so much inspired by meeting all of you through the kickoff of the Global Ambassador Program. It starts with ourselves. So Zubair, I want to thank you also for leading this hosting, because being a pioneer and leading this subject is not easy. So I look very much forward to work with you, not only to think tank, but also to work with you and how we can combine forces through our global movement. And what is in the name? In the name is now, of course, the UN week, 75 anniversary. So although we think something is happening, we have to celebrate still life. And I think it's very strong that we are here together. And Zubair, again, what can we do more? Please tell me.
Well, I think the list is literally like this, you know, it's ongoing and we'll come to that. Just in terms of, we gave some introductions for those listening in online. We deliberately haven't given bios. You can connect to all of our panelists directly on LinkedIn. And that way it's a direct connection and you can expand your network immediately. But Martijn, as you say, just echoing your point, this is the whole purpose of bringing people together because we know there's a lot more to say, there's a lot more to do, there's a lot more to share. And I think this whole idea of collaborating and partnership, and Dan Thomas said it yesterday, that it's all about partnerships and it's all around people. I think we have to be cognizant of the fact that we can't do everything by ourselves. We have to work together collaboratively. But we all have different roles to play in that regard. So if we want to act in achieving the world that we want to live in and delivering on the SDGs, and as we move into a decade of action and implementation, then we need to bring people together. And that's what today's about. So I'm going to jump straight into it. So we'd like to understand from our panelists your own kind of sustainability journey for those that are in that space, for others, your purposeful journey, and the pivots that you've had to make. So basically describing at what point you realized you had a much bigger role to play in the world. You know, when was it that you thought, I've got to do more? And what inspirational stories can you share? So have a think about those things. that you've been doing to adapt to that, either before COVID or during COVID? So what was the light bulb moment that you had where you had a bigger role to play in the world? Martijn, over to you.
Look, we are using these conversations, of course, and UN SDGs as a barometer for impact and how we all have a role to play in shaping that. And again, I want to understand more why, again, for instance, Adil, who just came back, what is he shaping in that area that is still a hazard in the situation of the influx of refugees within Europe, which is blocked. So I would like to understand through this conversation, how can we unite our cooperation, how can we unite business for a better world in this UN week. So just a question, first of all, to you, Adil. What happened in the past week and what happened to you again, how you are able to move with movement on the ground to work on the next, let's say, developments? What can you say about that, please?
Yes, well, thank you for the introduction, Zubair and Martijn. It's a great honor to be part of this group of people, of like-minded people, all set on the same mission, I think, in changing this world for the better. And in the first place, for the people that deserve the best conditions that we can give them. That's definitely the case on Lesbos. Lesbos has been, since 2015, the epicenter of the European migration crisis, taking hundreds of thousands of people in an overwhelming situation. Facilities that were definitely not meeting the humane standards that we think should be applicable for people that have lost everything. It's been a journey the past 5 years as movement on the ground, where we have been trying to change, in the first place, the perception how to view these people on the flight. We tend not to call them refugees and label them in a certain corner, but to see that these are people that are so resilient and they have so much potential, and they only need a push in the right direction and a healing environment to unlock that potential. The past weeks were two of our most challenging. As you know, the largest refugee camp in Europe was burned down, putting again these people on the flight, living on the streets unprotected. As an organization that is really into the action, responding in an emergency situation, we were able to move together with other colleague NGOs, the Greek government, into a new temporary facility, making sure that the people at least would have some protection inside a camp. At this moment, our team, together with, and that, I think that's the key that I would like to bring across, together with the residents, as we call them, the residents, so the people on the flight of this temporary, we're creating an environment that can support, protect, enable the rest of the community members in a dignified existence. It's not easy, talking about 12,000 people moving in a couple of days to a temporary facility. But I came on one hand heartbroken to see the largest refugee camp in Europe being burned down. But I also came again very much inspired to see the readiness and the willingness of the people themselves to create better conditions for them and for their peers. And I think one of our biggest goals at Movement on the Ground is shifting the paradigm and to continue to victimize people on the flight, but to understand that because of the resilience and the power that they have in their search to safety, security, and a new future, lies so much potential for as a society. That's what we are working every day together with them towards dignity.
Adil, and then we will continue to ask Ehsan and the panelists also about what is in our nature to help, to be humble, but to help. Where did you came back with that you want to message out to the world and ask our global audience to support you as a organization, but also as a new type of, in my opinion, type of organization who found a niche into the market to build bridges between human capital, between respect, but also get things done. What do you need? Just to be frankly and open, what do you need from us?
I think bringing the true faces of people on the flight across the globe, understanding that social media is a very powerful mechanism and tool that can work both ways, but showing the true faces, the potential of these people, how they can contribute to our society, the enrichment that we can gain from these new members of our society, because that's how we see them. And voicing their voices, I think that's the biggest message I would like to have, and that I would like to bring across to the people. Let's not victimize people. Let's not see them for the needy position that they find themselves in, but let's see for the human capital and the human potential that they can be to our society.
I just want to jump in there, Adil. You know, I'm listening to you and I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm looking at body language as well, and you feel this sense, I get this sense of compassion from you. So I just want to go back to Martijn's question and just maybe bolt on to this. What is it that you and the rest of our panelists feel? Why do we feel this need to help? Is there something inherently inside us? So for you, I know previous life you were in real estate. Did you just wake up one morning and think, I should be doing more? You know, what was that like at that moment? Or do you think this is inherently inside us, this value of helping other people, doing good?
I truly believe that altruism is in every human being on this planet. I just encountered the picture of Alan Kurdi in 2015, now exactly 5 years ago. And I just don't want to live in a world where children wash ashore. I just don't want to live in a world where people that have fled from persecution, from war, for conflict, find themselves in even sometimes environments that they have to survive even harder for. And I think these are our new citizens. I want to look myself in the mirror and understand that I was welcoming these new citizens. And I want to also tell to my children as a legacy that when there was a European migration crisis happening in Europe, we were there to welcome these people because we believe that there's enough space for everyone on this planet.
Okay, that's good. Should we ask Ehsan? Let's ask Ehsan the same point as well. Because you come from a different perspective, right? Why do you feel that you need to do good?
It's funny that I've turned 30 today, and in my reflection,
I know, I didn't want to say it publicly in case it was embarrassing, but happy birthday.
No, thank you so much. And Adil used the word resilient, and I wrote that in my journal today, my reflective journal, because it's been 15 years in my sustainability journey so far as a young person, so I can speak on the young people behalf. Honestly, resilient, I have an issue with that word, because people put us in a certain bracket and say, oh, they're resilient. You bring them a problem and they'll survive through it. Yes, we're resilient. You celebrate that part of us, but you give us opportunity and space to unlock the potential Adil is referring to as well. So I'm not saying that 15 years ago I realized that, but 15 years ago when I went to a government school and we came from a school, from a privileged background, I saw the disparities, you know, from the watch we wear, the shoe we wear, and the other counterparts having such a different lifestyle. Suddenly you realize that, hey, maybe I need to calm down a little. I need to become a little more humble, right? So that humbleness comes in when you interact. And I firmly believe if there are young people listening or parents listening, put your kids out there into situations and fields and like send them on these exchange programs, or at least create those community of practices where they go and see the ground realities. It is way more different, right? So that sparks that individual kind of what we say, the journey for sustainability or things like that. But then one thing I would also add on this is that if this may not be true for the global north, or maybe completely true for global south, or maybe not at all, is about being bold. We as young people have always been a little timid, right? Ehsan, don't say this. Maybe when you're in US, your visa will get revoked. Where Ehsan, you work in the UN, have a like be a little conscious of the content you say. Why can't we have a bolder statement as an organization as well? Yes, we're goodwill ambassadors. Yes, we are talking about change through collaboration and all the good stuff, but then we all need to also have a statement. We need to have values. We need to have a characteristic as a network as well. What is a no for us and what is a yes for us, right? So universality within our values and things is equally important. And honestly, today at the UNDP, they were asking what is our new big strategic thinking, and I said that our new strategic big thinking is that we need to have an opinion as an organization. We as businesses also need to have an opinion. For instance, one of the fashion brand recently stopped working with China because they said that there are certain issues, ethical issues they don't want to work around with. So character of businesses is equally important as well. And tokenistic involvement of young people is something we need to check again. And we also need to see if you're giving space to a young person on your network or table, listen to them. They're the biggest representation of the population outside, the demographic outside. Do not think them of, oh, they don't have experiences. They might not have the right experiences to be on the table with you, but they're a good representation of the opportunities out there because they may be more visionary than you because they're experiencing things at first hand. So I can speak forever. So over to you guys. Sorry.
Well, let's continue that conversation. So, Hermina, maybe you can give an example of when you felt the pinch moment or the pivot, the light bulb moment. And the second part of the question, as Martijn put it, is, do you think that this doing good feeling is inherent in our nature? Is it just something that, you know, if we're around the right people, we'll pick it up?
For me personally, I honestly believe that nature and environment shapes our behavior. And I inherently think that every human being has within them the capacity to do good. I think it just depends then on what our circumstance is, where we grow up, what are the challenges and the barriers that we are facing that prevent us from showing up in the way that other people need us to show up for them. For me personally, I always have been, from a young person, that person who feels empathy. As a woman, I think it is ingrained within us women, this feeling for empathy. So I've always put myself in other people's shoes. I've been the one who, if I see people not speaking or if someone feels excluded, that I want to make them feel included. I don't know if that is something that is in my genes because I come from a family of educators and as well from different sectors of society. I think also I realized that people just want to be seen. People just want to be heard. People just want to be included. And you know, there's an inherent connecting string that brings all of humanity together. And I think once we understand where their ideas are shaped, where they come from, and what are the reasons pushing the mindset and the mind frames they have, then we can put ourselves in their shoes and empathize with their situations and empathize with why they're behaving or they're reacting to a certain situation the same way. Also for me, because I uniquely come from a family that is mixed. So in every way, politically, racially, ethnically, I grew up with three brothers, so I was, you know, the only girl. So I think that it's just environment, the way I grew up, where I grew up, the opportunities that existed to me, and also the challenges that I faced as well shaped me into the individual that I am. I think I always from a young age felt like encouragement and empathetic towards other individuals, but I think environment definitely shapes people. And I think a person who may initially, for example, if we use situations where people may emerge from challenges or countries may emerge from conflict, maybe the behaviors they exhibited in peacetime may not be the same behaviors that they exhibit in times of economic stress or political stress. So I think it's just a matter of what our environment is, what shapes us, where we are, and what it is that is driving our actions as well. And yeah, I think we're all connected in the end.
Thank you so much, Hermina. And that bridged me in a way where we are could make the difference. What do you think about, why do you think we need feel to help, you know, to do good? So I think also where you're sitting, either it's in Europe or in the Far East, if you're surrounded with infrastructure, with issues, with poverty, with inequality, it makes you as a person. And that is the question also that we have to Imtinan. What do you think about, why do you think we need to feel to help? You know, this very essential question. Can you give us an insight on your side, please?
Well, I think, oh, sorry.
It's for, the second question is now for Imtinan. Just to,
all right,
to close this big question, by the way, we would like to hear everybody say, okay? Okay, Imtinan, what do you think about that?
Martin, that's a great question. To be honest, the way I think we need to approach it is by just asking ourselves, not to probably to the society or anyone else, just asking ourselves one simple question. What kind of a society do we really want to live in? What kind of atmosphere or an ecosystem we want our kids to grow in? And then every person will eventually get the answer intrinsically. That is this the society? Is this where the poverty is there? Kids are being died. I mean, there's such a death toll based on the sanitation issues we have. Water is not available to people. These are so common issues that we've got in our societies. I mean, things that we can't really imagine while sitting in metropolitan areas. That these are the issues, these are the real issues that people are facing. So if we just ask ourselves that is this society really worth living in, then I think we'll easily get the answer to that. And the answer is we need to do something. We need to do something to bring that change. My journey started for quite a long time, but what I do remember that the pivotal point for me to bring that change in myself was when I think around 10 or 12 years ago, I was doing an assignment for World Bank and I was in the interior part of Sindh. And at the same day, it was my son's birthday. So I was getting the calls about the birthday preparation from home as well. And I was there in the field. And I was surrounded by these young children who were just getting out of the school. And I started talking to them and we were just having a chit chat. And they told me that they technically do not have a livelihood. Their families do not really want them to go to the school. They've got issues because they are fishermen. Because in Badin, that's the only thing you can really have. There's no agriculture there, so there's no source of income that they can have. And the kids were so happy seeing me and my photographer that they wanted to get around and getting themselves photographed. And I just asked myself, how is my child different from them? Because they do not have the full potential. Well, they do have the full potential, but somehow it's our responsibility to tell them that how they can achieve their full potential. If they never had the livelihood sources or if they were stricken by the poverty, somebody should have lent them a helping hand and get them out of it. So probably I think as we normally put that in a rhetorical situation and we say that they are not the children of a lesser God. So we need to just ask ourselves, if this is the society we are creating, we need to bring that change. So the answer is probably not to anyone, just to ourselves. What kind of a society we really want to live in.
Thank you. Thank you for this Again, a big question, but also inspiring answer. Jehan, can you please follow up on this question as well? What do you think we feel a need to help to others? And what does it brought to you to start with that?
So Martin, thank you. It's been inspiring listening to all the panelists on this subject. I think, you know, it's a very simple answer. When we do good, we feel good about it as well. It's really a selfish thing. When we do anything that's good, that helps people, something inside us makes us feel warm and good about ourselves. I remember that the first time that I actually felt that I had to actively go out and do something was in the healthcare area, because my mother, who was on a health plan and was very ill for a long time, said to me, she said, you know, I go through all this pain. I have the best medical care that's available in this country. I think about all the people who don't. I wonder how they survive and how they go through this. That made me think that, yeah, you know, we should put ourselves in the place of other people who really cannot afford very basic healthcare, who go through a lot more pain and who possibly lose their lives because there's nobody who's willing to reach out. And you know, the best thing that I think my life provides me with is all the young people around me. And that's why what Ehsan said hit me quite strongly was that, you know, all these young people whom I work with, they're in their 20s, maybe some in their early 30s. They are all looking at the problems that Pakistanis have and they're trying to solve them. So if I am able to support them, if I'm able to provide them with mentoring, if I'm able to just listen to their issues and solve their issues, they will be able to solve the problems that this country has. And they are doing it. You know, whether it's the floods, whether it's, earthquakes, you see these young people are the first out there, lending a helping hand, dropping everything, dropping from work, from families, going out there and putting themselves at risk because they know that help is needed. So I think, you know, the simple answer to this is it makes us feel good to do good. And I think the more people who do good, the more likely we are to solve the problems of this country and the world.
Thank you so much, Jan. Hugo, from complete different, let's say, environment or area, what do you think we feel need to help? And what are you doing about? Can you please step in here?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, completely different start in the environmental field, but okay, it's a people, planet and profit. So we have to combine it, we all know. But when I started, when I was very young, long time ago, of course, at law school, I already decided I should bring this in the mainstream, bring environmental, let's say, solutions in the mainstream. And not only by doing less bad or be neutral or do good. Mm-hmm. Sorry to be a little bit provocative here, because responsible behavior is very good and altruism or philanthropy is very good. But you need a little bit in addition to it. And that's in your normal behavior when you run a business or you work with the government. All these elements of the SDGs, all 17 we know now, should be in your decision making. And if it comes from yourself, I would promote this. That's wonderful. But we have learned from COVID-19 and perhaps other elements like the climate agreement, we need regulation and legislation as well. So we need a government to help us here, not only to facilitate, but also to regulate. And I hear our members in the Dutch UN Global Compact asking for this. Also, of course, the companies will take the lead, they will take the responsibility, but they need an active government and doing good is part and parcel of that.
Thank you, Hugo. Time is too short, by the way, to go deeper into that, but we look forward to continue our conversation. It's not ending, like Zubair already mentioned. Thank you. Darcy, from the complete other side of the world, Australia, please step in with your inspiring words. Why should you help? Why should we help? And what is the source for that to do that?
Yeah, well, from my perspective, you know, I grew up in Australia, loving cricket, and often beating Pakistan and England in cricket and other places. But let's not dwell on that. but I mean, I grew up oblivious to the world around me. You know, I'd lived in a very safe environment with adequate clean water, access to health and education. So I kind of say that my education started the day I finished university, because that's when I went and started to travel into the world and you know, was privileged enough to be going travel in the world, and went to, you know, Central Asia to climb mountains in Kyrgyzstan, and then met people my same age who were teachers just like me, but their salary was $40 for 1 month. And I knew that I would make $40 an hour if I was a teacher in Australia. And just that contrast really hit me. You know, why does the world work like this? I knew I wasn't smarter. I didn't work longer. I didn't work harder than my friends. Basically, it was just because of where I was born. And so poverty to me, from seeing, and I'm not saying that I saw that poverty, it was the inequality that I saw. And I finally saw my own privilege of having been brought up in a country like Australia with access and opportunity. So poverty to me isn't about money. It's about access and opportunity. And I really identified with everything that the other panelists have talked about today. It really comes down to access and opportunity. And then when I realized that I had, you know, this access and opportunity at my hands, I knew then I had to do something with it, not out of guilt or obligation, but out of joy and wanting to play an active role as a global citizen and try and do small things that eventually add up into a collective context to create positive change. And it gets me to interact with wonderful people like there are here today. So my concept of teaspoons of change is to look at those personal choices, decisions, and actions that we might take that can make a positive impact. And if we all start to do our little bit, it starts to add up pretty quickly. You know, polio eradication is a pretty good example of that, and there are many others in the world. So I suppose I feel lucky that I was brought up in a privileged way, and I feel lucky that I saw the contrast of inequality, and also feel lucky that I have the opportunity to be able to interact and do things I love doing that does have a positive impact. And I think we can all do that. We don't have to be anyone special. We don't have to work for the UN. We could be hairdressers and doctors and whoever it is, and just, you know, play an active role in our community. So I think that's where I try and keep things pretty simple and wake up pretty happy each day to try and do what I can. Wow.
That's a big quote. So even little steps make big changes, right? This is perhaps a bit of the rephrase. Everybody can make a change, whatever you do. Thank you, Darcy, for diving a bit deeper into this question. Niaz.
Sorry for the cricket comment.
it's let's be honest. Sports
comment from me. I'm a football fan, but I know that there are other people on the panel who are oh, okay, that's a conversation with Darcy later. Maybe even an Athelos rematch.
Why not? Let's do it actually.
Sorry, Martijn. Continue, please.
No, thanks. Sports helps us to energize within the lines, right? And to do where we want to believe in. And thank you again, Darcy. Niaz, last but not least for now, what do you think we feel needed a little bit of help, and what are you doing about it, and what inspired you to do so? Is Niaz still there?
Yeah, just need to unmute.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Sorry about that.
Yes,
great.
No,
perfect.
great.
Thank you.
So yes, have a seat. Thank you so much. It's so good to be amongst so many enlightened people at one time, and I'm really grateful for a lot of your insights. My story is very simple. I was a guy who used to run organizations and companies, and CSR was one of those activities, and that's how I know Zubair. We did something together on refugees from a Zong perspective. I was one of those guys who were always, envisioning things. I helped our organization to bring in 4G technology to Pakistan in terms of revolutionizing the country and providing greater access, which we were able to do successfully, and then everybody kind of followed. But in my personal life, I was a family man who would spend a lot of his time with his family and try to do the CSR activities through the organization. Wasn't really much into this area any big time. And then about 4 years ago, I got into an accident and I got paralyzed from the neck down. And obviously, life suddenly changed for me. And, when I came to senses, a lot of people asked me that I should become a motivational speaker and do a lot of those things. But when I kind of scouted the space, I saw that anybody who speaks well and, has a point of view is a motivational speaker. And so I decided not to do anything on that front. Instead, for the last 3.5 years, I've been working on my own self before I start speaking anything. And for me, there were a lot of challenges, right? In terms of everything, in terms of learning about new life, in terms of understanding, the pains that one goes through. A lot of those preaching that everybody does, I had to actually do it in a practical manner. And that required a lot of time. I thought that I had to build the character first before I start speaking, because I felt the need for it in my own personal life. And about 6 months, and then I started my own consulting company. I advise, CEOs with regards to how to manage their organization in terms of transformation. That is something that is the business aspects of it. But about 6 months ago, I saw a few things in my life which tremendously changed my point of view. And that was that there is a lot of hopelessness around the globe, and especially in our country also, because of various different things, various different factors that are in play. And I started exposing myself more in terms of giving out the messages of hope. And I thought that hope, is important factor, because a lot of time in life, things are very much possible, but it is our thought that confine us in a way that is unimaginable, right? And when I started sending out those messages of hope, I started seeing that they resonate with people's mind and communities where I never even thought that it would be possible. So I think the rest of you are helping the humanity, and you have a bigger heart and you have a bigger cause. But in my case, I'm more of a selfish man because I have ran organizations and companies. I feel that, by doing this, what I'm doing, it is something that I want to show to people that life is very, very colorful, and that you never need to give up hope. Because in countries like Pakistan, when you are paralyzed from the neck down, life all of a sudden stops. It is very easy to talk, but the minute, just imagine yourself stuck to a chair, not able to move your finger or eye or your feet, or not able to stand and go out into a bathroom and not able to dine. Life all of a sudden requires very much practical enthusiasm, away from the theories and talks and all that sort of stuff. And I realized a lot of preachers who were, very big in terms of preaching people, there were very few that were left actually to demonstrate that. I decided that this is something that I'm going to do. I'm not sure how good I'm doing that, but what I do now is that I do send out weekly messages to people that you must never give up, and that life is all about possibilities. That if you can imagine, you can actually do it. If a paralyzed man living in Pakistan can do it, then obviously you having everything else, life is enormous amount of, it's a bundle of joy. and that's what I do. You know, I don't really have a lot of, I'm not sure that how targeted I am in that. You know, a lot of you who have, you know, been on this journey for a long period of time, helping humanity and different causes which are closer to your heart. You know, I am somebody who has been, who just got into, thrown into this kind of a deal. And I try to ensure that whatever I say, I am able to actually do it, you know, with my limited movements, and I be able to demonstrate to people that yes, it's all good. So that's about it. That's what, you know, my life has been.
I think that's really inspirational, really inspirational. Yeah. And I'm seeing, you know, we've just from that, Martin, you framed the question so perfectly. It's touched upon food poverty, gender equity, climate action, and so much more. And it was great to hear all those different perspectives. And I hope the people that are listening online and will listen later as well can see that there are specific moments that have inspired people to change. We often forget to ask the host. So Martijn, just very quickly, I want to ask you, when was your moment of realization, your light bulb moment where you thought, I need to be driven by purpose? Do you remember when that was? I know when mine was. And that's a conversation for another day, perhaps over coffee, but just back to you. When was your moment of true inspiration? I can hazard a guess.
I was raised with it. So giving to others, I was raised in a very small family. First of all, very social democratic family. And where the say was, if you help one other, you will give yourself. So if I look at that, let's say historical, let's say way, I went moving on and trying to find a way. Although I'm very business minded, but I heard it already in a couple of let's say motivations here, that the moral and the altruism, and making a program out of that to create the business perspective. Started already when I think I was 6 years old, to help others, because I was raised, you know, I was raised to help others, and sometimes that gave difficulties, because sometimes you forget yourself in that. But that is the learning curve during wherever you come from. But for myself as a person, building your own character, and this is what Niaz is mentioning, you know, building your character to help others. Is also being good and doing good. So the reason what I wanted to start finally 5 years ago, when I met again Adil, like you met Niaz in the past, you meet the right people, and there's a momentum that it connects, it ignites an all of a sudden cooperation where we thought, okay, let's move together and create business purpose leadership. And all the things and all the references that you have made in your life, all the difficulties by failing one of my companies, which brought me almost also burned out as a person. I hear it to Niaz, you know, when I hear him, I think by myself, wow, how inspiring. After all, hope is not the strategy, but it helps you to continue. So all your circumstances in the past will make you. And when you're getting older, for me, it helped me a lot to build a program and to work structurally on moving to a next level, together with the people that we have here in the panel. So a lot of things happens in my life, but at the end of the day, do good, but act also. And like Hugo mentioned also, be sharp as a knife as well. And I mean positive with that, because at the end of the day, make the discussion. You know, don't take things for granted. And also after this conversation, it's good to have a conversation. It's good to understand others. But what can we do together? And I look very much forward for that part as well.
And that's exactly what the purpose of this conversation is. It's to sort of find those pinch moments in life, those light bulb moments, use that as a point of reflection. And as you say, Martin, quite rightly, we are who we are because of all because of the journey that we're on, and of all the people that we've met in our lives, some good, some not so good. And that shaped us to be who we are. But I'm sensing a lot of this nature versus nurture discussion, and I think that's something we'll come back to. So as you've said rightly, Martijn, we've seen the world around us change dramatically over the last 6 months as a result of COVID and the world's pressing challenges. But also over the last decade, we've seen through technological advancements, like exponentially, we've seen the growth of companies building themselves around technology. So I want to pose a question to everyone, but I don't think we've got enough time to ask everyone. So just a short kind of response, really, I guess, from whoever wants to answer, is do you think as individuals and as a collective, we now have the same importance today as role models and people that inspire change if we're competing against technology? Do we have the same value to others? Do we present the same value to others? Do we have the same importance? So whoever wants to go first, so let's flip it around rather than ask someone specific. Who wants to answer that question? And very short. I can see Darcy itching to say something. Hermina, please.
I think if we see technology as a stumbling block, as opposed to as an enabler, then we already start from a negative. Technology does advance very quickly, and we have artificial intelligence, we have all sorts of technologies that people may fear because they don't understand. But what technology lacks is human empathy and the human reasoning capacity that we have. We have certain qualities that does not exist in technology. And once we learn how to use technology in the right ways, it can definitely advance us and advance our work. So I think it's very important to not see technology as a stumbling block, but how we could use technology to get what we need done very efficiently, and also to realize that we have something within us that technology does not and cannot replicate.
Yeah, so I'm hearing from that we use technology perhaps to amplify the message further and farther. And I know, Darcy, you talked about access and inclusion. What's your take on that? Do you think that we're competing with technology, or do people still value personal relationships? I mean, look, we're talking on Zoom right now. I know for me, I'd much rather be sat with all of you around in a nice lounge setting with a good coffee and having this conversation. And I see some people smirking because they know what I'm talking about. But do you think that we're competing with technology? Does today's generation and the future generation value this people interaction?
Yeah, I mean, my quick thought on that is that, I mean, I'm working remotely. I'm meant to be in China working, but I can't get there. And so I'm doing it from Australia. And it makes my eyes go cross-eyed because I'm staring at the screen, 8-10 hours a day. But at the same time, it's how we then mature with that technology is my personal feeling. I think early technology adaptation is a bit of it's a new frontier and we don't really know what we're doing with it. But eventually we find the maturity of how to utilize it most of the time for the greater good, I believe. And I think at the moment with a lot of new technologies, our incubation process of that is still cooking away, and for something like social media, we've gone up and down and around and used it in all different kinds of ways. But I think as we go along, our maturity will hopefully put it in its right place. But what I personally would like to see is a little bit more front loading of where we try and match good intentions with good outcomes, and rather than just kind of throwing it out there and seeing where it lands. So that's something that I try and think about. And then, I've used this in aid and development a lot as well, is making sure that our good intentions match good outcomes. That seems to be a pretty good model for most things, including technology. Thanks.
Now, Ehsan and Jehan, I want to ask you the same question, because you're actually in the tech space, as it were, that impacts people. So literally from an SDG perspective, but also bring Imtinan into this as well, because I've seen how the work that you're doing through your platform is really answering that question, because you're using technology to help influence and change mindset. So I don't know who wants to go first, but over to you guys.
Going back to your previous statement around the point of making a movement around these things, so I'll echo that. Movement technology would not make, right? Movement is actually the human touch, bringing the trends together, the patterns together. So at the Accelerator Lab at UNDP, what we're doing is that we look at development problems from a portfolio logic, right? Technology being one of the multifactorial intervention point. Maybe it would be policy, environment, infrastructure, education, health, but there are multifactorial things around a development problem. So you put the problem in the center, try to engulf it from multiple angles, technology being a strong point when required, whatever development problem we're trying to solve, but who's going to bring it together? Who's going to bring the trends together? Maybe there is a machine learning or an AI thing which can do the data analysis for you to measure the impact, but who's going to make that movement? So strategic communication needs to come in, identifying the local solutions out there, which may not be even existing on any of the technology forum or social media or nothing, right? So identifying those grassroots level solutions and then bringing them also into the larger portfolio logic. So I feel like the human touch is rather has increased than to be diminished, because now we are more needed than ever to see the trends which approaches or technology cannot see, but we can kind of connect the dots. So rather I want to say we play the lens of connecting the dots. Over to Jehan. Yeah.
Thank you, Ehsan.
Zubair. John, can I ask you a favor? Can I just state a few things and then go, because it's some other prayer time, then I have to go.
Of course, Niaz.
Sure. Okay. So thank you so much. I think technology is going to be a great enabler for us. And I think we shouldn't be afraid of technology. And the reason I say that is because I was the Chief Information Officer of PTCL, and I worked with Deloitte, with organizations that had a market cap of over $40 billion in terms of rolling out, technology and transformation. And I am a very keen learner in terms of history also. And I found out that technology has always enabled us. And the biggest and perfect example of that is, you can look at me at this time. Here is this guy who's totally paralyzed, talking to all of you, sitting on his wheelchair. And this wheelchair provides me with the kind of access that is required, because it has the artificial intelligence built into it, which keeps me safe. So my personal point of view is that technology will evolve and it will make our life more colorful. But we have to know how to use this technology, because the technology has also destroyed many lives. If you take a look at the war in Iraq, if you take a look at what we have done in Syria, if we take a look at the whole aspects of atomic bombs and all those side of things. But for me personally, I think that technology has been a great enabler. It has revolutionized my life. And I thank God every day that, there have been people who have been thinking very differently, who have made it possible for me to be here and to discuss all these things with you. So that's how I look at it. With that, I will beg leave. I'm extremely thankful to all of you. I know it sounds a bit rude, but I have to go and pray. It's the Maghrib time. Okay. Please. Thank you so much.
Thank you soon.
Take care. Take care.
Jehan, back to you. What's your thought?
So I think, personally, I've always thought of technology as an enabler and something that allows me to reach many more people than I could do in person. And I think who you are is easily translatable through technology. I have made so many friends. I have been able to reach out and learn from so many people, and perhaps teach some of them some of the things that I know, connect people who would otherwise never have met each other, who've been able to learn from each other. And technology I have seen being used, especially during the times of COVID, to provide mental health, counseling. There have been startups who have enabled people, who have helped them, who have been able to solve their problems simply because technology was available. Otherwise, to be able to reach that many people personally would not have been possible. And the times of COVID, of course, not possible at all. So I wonder what we would have done if we didn't have access to technology during the last 6 months. I think many of us would possibly have gone mad. I certainly would have, because I live by myself and I would have been totally disconnected from the rest of the world because I could no longer go out, I could no longer travel. And I've seen that. I mean, lots of young people have reached out to each other for help using technology and been able to help each other through this period. So I think we should look at technology as an enabler and never as something that will replace human beings. It never can.
So do you think, just before we move on to Imtinan, do you think that that inherent feel good, ya acha lagta hai, this feels good, can be translated, converged through this digital platform? We can still feel that empathy. So do you feel we can still feel that empathy of doing good, this, you know, ya acha lagta hai karne, online? Does that translate via platforms like Zoom, or do you think it still needs to be face to face?
So like you, I would prefer to be with people in person. Yeah. I would like to be able to give people a hug. I would like to have a good cup of coffee with them. But when it can't happen, I think, yes, the empathy, people have learned that, you know, I can sense what you're feeling through your smile or through the words. I think it's possible that there was a time when we think of technology in this way, but because we've been forced to use it, I think people have begun to understand that whether it's Skype, whether it's Zoom, whether it's anything else, it connects us. Distance doesn't separate us anymore.
I love that. I love that. Imtinan,
yeah.
You motivate and enable other people. So I know you see technology as an enabler completely in the real sense, but you also, when we work together and you also talk to people and remember, you know, just for audience perspective, when you were at UNICEF and you were working on sanitation, talking to community leaders to try and get them to understand the reasons of why they should adopt those best practices. And now you're where you are with the work that you do with your current project. Do you still feel that we have this value, or has it diminished or increased, or has technology enabled you to reach more people?
Thank you, Zubair. Certainly, there's no question about that. The technology is a great enabler. But when you started that question, you actually mentioned two things in that. One was technology, and the other one was about the role models. So we were comparing technology with the role models that we have today. I personally feel that certainly, and everyone has said fantastically, that technology is going to be there. It's going to solve a lot of our problems, and it is going to be a great enabler. But eventually, when it comes to human behaviors, we just need to, again, focus on one question. Who do we really want to be in our life? We try imitating or replicating a celebrity, a leader that we like, or somebody that we're influenced with. So we want to be like those people. So eventually, yes, technology is going to help. But at the end of the day, if the message is clear, inspiring, amazing, then people would get connected. In our case, since much of our work is towards education, counseling, psychotherapy, psychologists and counseling helplines, eventually it's the person at the end of the line. So Zoom is important for us. We conduct a lot of our sessions on Zoom. Telephones and telephonic helplines are important to us. But eventually that person who's answering those phones, if that person, that instructor is inspiring, things will become much easier. So technology, yes. So technology is certainly helping us in reaching to the far-fetched areas, but the message has to be inspiring. So the role of the role models, I think that has got a long way to go, and that cannot be diminished by technology. Technology is going to amplify that. It is going to help us in reaching more people with the message that can really reach out to the hearts. But certainly role models are important as far as the technology is there to play the supporting role.
Great, great. I know, Martijn, you want to say something, but I just want to jump across to Hermina quickly, because you're working with a specific area. You know, we talk about gender equality and gender equity. I know you're a champion for that, and that's the cause that you subscribe to. And quite often we forget in all of this big conversation, that particular issue. That's something that's close to my heart. I have 2 young girls. I've grown up in an empowered household, from my grandparents to my mother and my wife. And I know Martijn and others around us have as well. So we've got a lot of inspiration around us, and you know, you touched upon a few points. We are who we are because of the people around us and the environment, and that's very much prevalent in my life. But what more can we do, in your view, and just a couple of quick points perhaps, in using technology, but this notion of very much about inspiring and acting as role models, the human touch that we talked about, to balance this issue of gender and inspire more girls and more young women to take charge or take more of an active role in the place they want to have in society, and some of the things that we talked about earlier. Just a couple of comments, I guess.
Sure. I think what we also forget is that access is it's important to give people access to platforms, but how do they, when they have the access, then utilize that platform, and are they skilled or trained to be able to use that platform? So I think we forget that women have been historically underrepresented in the technology field. And so now that with COVID-19 and everyone has been forced to work from home, there are many people who are being left behind, and most of them women who have multiple roles as well in their lives and in society. So I think it becomes then important to not only give people access, let's just throw them in their room so they're there, but we also have them feel included, and we provide a support system where they can have mentors, where they can lean on and ask questions and continue to learn as well. And we have to also remember that younger generations may be more comfortable with technology usage. We may have very skilled older women who may not be comfortable with utilizing technology, and their work has now become burdensome for them. So I think it becomes important for us to just as I said before, put ourselves in other people's shoes, but also with a note of inclusion and having the empathy to be able to train people as well, and to give women a seat at the table, but also a voice, and so that they're included, and don't only put them in positions of power, but also ensure that they are retained and address the reasons why they leave those careers as well. So or their workplaces or schools, and also half of the world doesn't have access to internet, the infrastructure, the electricity. I mean, there are many stumbling barriers to people to access technology. Technology can be a great thing if it's equal, and if we have that vision to build back better and have more people included in the development process, and to make the infrastructure necessary for people to be able to thrive in this technology-based environment. And that it should not be a replacement. When we do find hopefully a vaccine, also to be able to move between those two worlds, because we also have to remember that women's life cycle is different from that of a man. So how could we incorporate flexible working situations so that women, when they do actually have children, and their life cycle changes, they can be more flexible to be able to do their work from home as well as in the office. So working together with each other to provide an enabling environment for people to be able to utilize the technology and the tools, train them so that they can be able to use them, and also ensure that there's access and infrastructure is ready to support that access. And I think sorry for going on about that.
No, that's fine. And I think I'm just saying, you know, I'm hearing what you're saying. We're listening all attentively. For some of us, this is news. For some of this is like everyday stuff that we're doing. And I see the expression and the excitement and the enthusiasm and the passion and the compassion. And I think this warrants definitely for another conversation on its own to be discussed in more detail. And I know Martijn has got very strong vision about inclusivity and accessibility. And, you know, some of the people in the team already working on this specific issue that you're talking about as well. So that's food for thought for another day. I'm conscious of time. We have gone over, but that's fine. I'm seeing so many synergies from everything that you're saying. It seems that we're already very well connected, and we've looked at how we're all committed to being responsible, doing something more than what we're doing in our own ways. And it strikes me that this really ties in with what UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said about recent reflections on public-private sector collaboration. But this, I think, goes way beyond that, and it's showing collaboration at the individual, intellectual, and heart level as well. So I'm really excited about what that looks like, what the next decade looks like, and also what this team looks like as well. Lots and lots to discuss still. And he talked about being bold and brave, and I think that's what we've got here. Martijn, I know you've got a question that you want to ask Adil and Hugo, and then I think that's probably time to sort of wrap up. So do you want to ask your last question to Adil and Hugo?
Well, it fascinates me also to hear Hermina about access everywhere, and like you said, Zubair, that is music to my ears, because the vision that we have as Atelos, and it's not about positioning the company as a access everywhere, anytime, any place, but I think Hermina is completely right. The half of the world is without access, even perhaps water, electricity, internet, mobile interaction. There are so many possibilities that we should spread the world. And we look forward, Hermina and all the team members here, to create access everywhere, whatever is needed to do that. So building a global telecommunication platform with a unique numbering system, so everybody can send money to A to B within the numbering system, or can have access on the internet, or at least can make a donation. This is where I believe in to build a better society together. And it brings me, thank you, Zubair, to almost the final, I think, quote of today that I want to ask Adil as well. What does a role model, again, bring you? But specifically also, what does technology bring you in the movement that you're bringing alive and kicking in the biggest refugee camp of Europe? What does technology help you? And how can we help you with that? And I'm talking we, as the togetherness in this panelist. Adil, are you still there?
Yes, I'm definitely still here. Thank you, Martijn. To start with a very short answer to your question, which is a vital question. What brings technology to me, to us as an organization in the playing field of the refugee domain? In the first place, trust. And I will tell you how, because I have a very, very visual story to that, and I will keep it short because I know that the time is short with us. I will never forget the day 3 years ago when we were still pioneering as a grassroots organization, but we were asked to support a population of 600 men, single men, living outside of the facilities, because they were considered that they could survive an environment where there was no surface, no water provision, no hygiene facilities whatsoever. They were really living underneath a tarp, showering themselves with a bottle of water. And we were asked as Movement Underground to see how we could empower and enable this community following our camp to campus philosophy. It was also a very troubling community. There was drugs abuse, there was alcohol abuse. They were really in a bad situation. But we went there, we sat down with them, and we started listening to them. We started hearing them. We started seeing them for the issues and the challenges that they had. And after a couple of hours, seeing the circumstances, the dire circumstances that they were, and we asked them the question, so what can we do for you? How can we help you? And we would have expected new tents. We expected for them to say, we need better food. We expected for them to say, we need running water and toilets and showers. And the first thing that they said was Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
They asked for Wi-Fi in those conditions that they were, because that meant connectivity. That meant that they were part and equal to everyone else that had access to information, to global information. They wanted to know where they were, and they wanted to also let their families and relatives know that they were okay. They wanted to check on their families and relatives. And we went away. I will keep the story short, but in 3 weeks' time, we provided a Wi-Fi network and access point through the Aegean University beam, and we asked them to help, and they were all ready. We put a home network up in that environment. There was nothing, and there were just a couple of points of access to the World Wide Web, and that made us such trustworthy people to them.
Yeah.
It's unimaginable what that gained, what it made us gain in trust to them. And everything from there went very smoothly. They were engaged, they were included, they were involved. So I will never forget that moment. And if you ask me what technology can bring, for me it brings trust.
Thank you, Adil. A role model is also acting by doing good and showing it that you build a trust by doing and making a solution like building Wi-Fi. Ehsan, what can you say about this, please? The role model versus doing good. What does it say to you as a final question?
Role model is a lot of pressure as well, right? Because like for instance, I'm not going to boast about this or anything, but I receive a lot of these messages from young people saying, hey, we get inspiration. Hey, Ehsan, what's your journey like? Because they can, it's also about as a
Technical issue, maybe connection.
If we talk about technology, there's sometimes a dip, right?
Yeah, well, let's wait till Ehsan joins us back.
Sure.
Maybe if we ask Hugo the same question as well, you know, because obviously you come from a different perspective. What's the value of being a role model from your perspective and the world that you come from? And obviously we're talking about leaders and thought leaders.
Okay. Well, I think it starts especially because I worked with the government for so long. It started home in your private life, that everyone expects you to live according to what you say. So how you build your house, do you have an insulated house, do you have solar panels, etc. Sorry, I speak from a very rich country. I know this is a future picture for others. But also the food, I don't eat meat, transportation, I travel by electric train with green electricity, by the way. And also at work, I worked from the start, like I explained. Also in always promoted buildings of the government and now of the building of the employers organization to have, let's say, sustainable principles. So that's, I think that convinces people that you don't speak only, but also explain how to do it and have some examples ready how you could do it. What are the tools to change? And of course, the Global Compact has developed some of these tools. It's the SDG ambition, if you want to raise your ambition. So that's what I played a little bit with the words, instead of doing good, even doing better. So we have some tools, developed some tools to have more ambitious goals. And also instruments to measure and report about it. And to change the management in the board.
Great,
that would be my attitude.
No, and I think this is, you know, everything that everyone said, and you've kind of summed it up very nicely, is that doing good or doing better has just actually echoed for Martijn and I that the need for a role model is as relevant today, if not more so today, than it has always been. And what I'm hearing is exactly what the title of this session is. We need to lead the world by example. We've all got the inherent attributes, our environment, nature versus nurture, the people we connect with, sharing platforms, technology, amplification, absolutely everything. I've just loved absolutely every moment of this conversation, and I want it to continue. So we're almost out of time, but I just want you to reflect very quickly. And I want something, I'm going to ask you something that you weren't prepared for, because I like putting people on the spot, not to catch them out, but just because just changes the flow and the dynamic component of the conversation. And it's also a moment of personal reflection. So I'd like all of you just to reflect for a moment and just share quickly with us, and we'll go around the room. What does the world look like for you in 2030? So I want to start with Jehan first. What does the world look like for you in 2030? And just be open and honest. You know, it could be your wish list. It could be what you think it will look like.
I think it's a wish list that I would like. I would like people here to have sufficient water, food, access to power, electricity, little by little. Might seem unusual for people living in developed countries, but here these are basic things that I think everybody should have. Basic healthcare, access to the internet, and Hermina was absolutely right. A lot of people don't have access to technology or know how to use it. The ability to provide this for 70% of Pakistanis who are below the age of 30 and who don't live in urban areas, I think that's what I would like to see, because to see people deprived just because they were born in the wrong place, inverted commas, is just not right. So that's what I'd like to see in the next 10 years, that people who do not have the things that people like us take for granted, perhaps,
it's a bit more
those are
balanced.
the things I would like.
Okay. Imtinan, what does 2030 look like for you, my friend?
Well, certainly the wish is going to be quite a longer one.
That doesn't
to
surprise
me. Yeah. Just one thing really, certainly the poverty, people need to get out of the poverty, and health issues need to be resolved, and sanitation issues, especially since I've dedicated like 10 years on that. So sanitation problems need to be solved. But to be honest, probably if we can achieve just one thing, that people understand that they can resolve most of their issues by just communicating. If they know that they can talk, they can use a phone, they can use an internet, they can just let their heart out. They can just make a phone call. That will be enough to solve most of the problems. The hatred would go down. The trolling would go down. I think most of our problems would be solved if we just start to and learn how to communicate with each other.
Excellent. Adil, what does 2030 look like for you?
I hope a world that is led by world leaders of compassion, inclusion, and action. To say so, on a global perspective. And when it comes to my personal domain, when it comes to the refugees and the refugee issue globally, I really would like to see in 2030 that we don't have any refugee camp where people are still in survival and in deprivation, but that we will see thriving communities and campuses around the globe where people have agency and can contribute to this society that we're all part of.
Great. Hermina, what does your 2030 look like?
I hope it means that we have all come closer together and lead from a place of empathy and understanding, and the golden rule, following the golden rule, treat others the way we would like to be treated, because COVID-19 has brought to the forefront, you know, many things that we have ignored ourselves. As Martijn said, you know, in helping others, we forget ourselves. But just a world where people understand each other, lead with empathy, and try to connect with each other, not compete. Know that we are all very different. We have all unique things to add to the table. We could bring in our comparative advantages and work together to bring about global change if we lead from empathy and forget the competitive mindset.
Great. Hugo, what does your 2030 look like? I know what the answer is going to be, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Well, instead of hope, I'm confident. Having negotiated the Millennium Development Goals, that was in 2000, And in 15 years, we were going to have poverty, hunger, clean water, etc. And we did it. We accomplished those goals. So why not? Why cannot we accomplish this another time? I know we have COVID now, but it's not an excuse. It's perhaps even an accelerator to do everything that we have to achieve the goals in 2030.
Okay, great. Darcy, last but not least, what does your 2030 look like?
Well, other than these things around me that I have as my backdrop, for me, it's the sustainability compass from Compass Education. So think of north, south, east, and west. And what I would love to see is a greater balance of N is for nature, W is for well-being, S is for society, and E is for economy. And so I think in the past we've been tilted very heavily towards the economy, but I feel like that we want quality of life instead of quantity of life. We're starting to move down to that path. And I think COVID, just as Hugo said, may just be an accelerator for us to find a better balance of those four components. So check out the sustainability compass, and I reckon we're going to get a better balance of those four components by 2030 with these goals helping us guide the way.
Brilliant, absolutely awesome. Ehsan's obviously dropped on the call, so we'll ask him and Niaz this question, as we will ask you, Martijn, as well. So you can post that on LinkedIn, what your 2030 looks like. So I think, Martijn, that's all we have time for today. So just in summation, we all clearly have a role to play. Each one of us is very much a role model. Some inspire ideas and trends, some motivate others to action, some reassure, and some advocate. And I know you want to make a special announcement just now as well.
Yes, again, this a complete conversation is resonating, and I would like to, before I would like to do a special announcement, which we are very grateful and thankful of, because of we met all around the globe through virtual communication, is what I learned from Adil a couple of weeks ago when we had a conversation in our office. We were sitting with a cup of coffee, and he said one major thing, in my opinion, that we should think about, be careful with transformation. Let's not become all a refugee in this world. It means we know now what is distancing. Okay, we know now what is inequality. What we know now what is without traveling to meet the people you love, you want to meet because you have to. So let's be careful with this big transformation process and not getting our next generation reprogrammed like my kids of 11 and 13 years old, because they are living in a distant society. This is what I will fight against, to be honest. So sorry, Zubair, to mention this, for 2030, for me is be careful with this, let's say, transformation is not going into a wrong direction. And I think we should support our government, but also be very skeptic sometimes about how they act. Intergovernmental sections. It's about the private sector that can help here with all the, let's say, powers that we have in this conversation already. So last but not least, and it will be the last conversation, Adil, Imtinan, Hermina, Niaz, Ehsan, and of course Darcy, I'm very grateful that we are going to start a further cooperation with the Global Ambassador Program, which is powered by Atalos and partners. And we look forward to move with you together to build better connectivity, better cooperation, and better outcome, finally, at the end of the day. And I think this is the purpose also of this conversation, and of course, of the UN. And we look forward to work with you in Global Compact, the Netherlands, and globally to make our dreams come true, because at the end of the day, we all have our dreams. So let's make it happen.
Great, thanks, Martijn. So I guess for the purposes of the audience, that special announcement was the official launch during UN Week of the Atlas Global Ambassadors Program. You can find more on Atlas World. And I guess for you guys now as ambassadors, this is now passing the baton to some extent on what is a decade-long relay race. So responsibility and pressure and burden, but we're all with you in support. Thank you, everyone. Panelists, all of you, also for those listening online. for being part of this UN Week Leading the World by Example session. We hope the discussion has sparked new ideas, challenged perceptions, and energized everyone for action. And Martin, the conversations don't stop here, right?
It is. It continues.
So they shouldn't stop here, and they won't stop here. So we'll encourage all of our guests to keep the conversations alive in their respective networks. Obviously, we'll continue the conversations. And for our participants listening in, this forum now presents the opportunity for you guys also to be part of the conversations, learn and also take actions in your various capacities as role models in your own relevant societies, communities, institutions, to address environmental issues, take the SDGs in general, for example, and together we can create the world that, as Imtinan said, that we want to see. So just echoing that thought again, you've heard it all here, keep the conversations alive. For all social media posts, just don't forget 2 key hashtags, Athelos World and Uniting Business. Once again, I'd like to thank Adil, Darcy, Hermina, Imtinan, Jehan, Hugo, Ehsan, Niaz, for all of you for spending a little bit longer than the hour that we had envisaged. Thank you for all your personal insights. Thank you for inspiring us. Thank you for acting as catalysts and a springboard for other people to follow suit. Obviously, this part of the journey has just started for us together, and we look forward to continuing that over the next decade as we do what we can as role models to play our part in leading the world by example. Thank you once again, and stay safe and speak soon.
Welcome to the world of Athelos.